Hi, I'm Michelle Jack Brown, and my son Colton Brown died in a single vehicle accident August 2nd, 2022. This is Katherine Wilt. She's a 25-year paramedic, and we went yesterday to look at the body cam footage at the scene of my son's accident. Katherine, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. What was the main thing that you noticed from watching the body cam footage? What bothered you the most?
There did not seem to be any concern about Mr. Brown's airway and making sure that it was open and clear and that he was getting oxygen. No oxygen was applied, no airway measures were taken for at least 6 to 7 minutes after he was removed from the vehicle.
And while he was being removed from the vehicle, did you notice anything that bothered you?
I feel like they could have put a cervical collar around his neck either while he was still in the vehicle as they had access to him, or as soon as they were able to get his upper body out, just to protect his neck based on the fact that they had to move him further to get to the spine board.
Right. And what was the number one thing that wasn't done that you told me that you felt like should have been done?
They should have called the helicopter. There was a helicopter on standby, and we know that they were approximately 20 minutes by ground to the trauma center where he needed to be transported to, and the helicopter could have gotten there within a few minutes and would have been able to do a lot more aggressive measures.
Exactly. I was told the helicopter could be there in 3 to 5 minutes. And actually, when you put it in the GPS by ground from that site, it says 23 minutes. The one thing that bothered me, and I wanted to get your view on this, is that when they started to take Colton into the hospital, that the EMT did not know how to get to the hospital. Is that unusual?
Depending on how long that person has been employed there, but my understanding is that that EMT had worked there and lived in that county for a long time. I would think you would know where the trauma center is. That's part of your job, is to know how to get to the hospital.
So whether or not how long she's worked there or lived there, you have to know how to get to the trauma hospital. Do you agree?
Yes.
That was really bothersome to me. So if your crew was there, what would you have done differently?
Well, we would have immediately launched the helicopter upon discovering that Mr. Brown was still alive in the vehicle. And of course, managing the airway would be a priority.
Yes. And there was no
and
airway
protecting
management.
the spine. No, not for at least 7 minutes after getting him out of the vehicle.
And the airway management was not the correct
No, it was not. They put what's called an NPA. They did 2 of them, 1 in each nostril, and that is the absolute wrong airway to use in a patient with facial trauma, which he did have, and that was very clear and obvious from looking at him that he had facial trauma. They should not have used those type of airways at all.
So with him not receiving any oxygen and having the 2 NPAs inserted, what would have happened to him under those circumstances?
Basically, he just died from lack of oxygen, hypoxia.
So that would have put him into cardiac arrest?
Absolutely. You can only go without oxygen for so long. If you're not oxygenating your patient and not maintaining their airway, you're not going to have a live patient for very long. And sadly, that's what happened in this case, and it shouldn't have.
Well, what disturbed me was I left, and so I would go out and then look through the window, and then I saw the paramedic sitting on a stool nonchalantly flipping her hair back and forth because her hair was down. Did that bother you at all?
It did. I know one of our hard and fast rules is you have to have your hair up above your shoulders. It can get in the way. It can also cause cross-contamination with blood and other fluids, and it's a hindrance.
Right.
So yeah, that was definitely concerning, and just her complete lack of, there was no sense of urgency to treat him. And again, the airway was the most bothersome thing. When somebody mentioned putting in the nasal airway, the paramedics should have said, no, that's not the correct use.
Right.
And I think they definitely caused more damage by using that.
Right, and we know from the 911 calls that the aircopter was put on standby at 11:17 p.m. and the firefighter asked the paramedic, "Do you want to launch the helicopter?" And what was her response?
She made a comment about how that since they don't have to have a prolonged extrication, it's not going to take them long to get Colton out of the vehicle, that it wasn't indicated, which is not correct per their protocol. They could still launch the helicopter because they had a long response time to the hospital. The helicopter is to get the patient to the hospital quicker, period. And
that
they
should have
could
been done.
have done that. They absolutely could have used them in this case.
Right. Well, after viewing the body cam footage, just the little bit that I saw through the window, I did have to get up and leave because it was upsetting. But I relied on Katherine, who is the paramedic, and I relied on Colton's friend. And just from the notes that I have, I'm highly upset after watching the two videos. Do you feel the same?
Absolutely. They did many things wrong. They did not do anything to try to ensure that Mr. Brown kept his pulse. They just kept checking and being surprised that he still had one, but they really weren't in a hurry to do anything as far as IVs or other airways, which he needed.
Exactly. And I almost got the feeling that they were just waiting for him to lose a pulse. Like they weren't bothered about doing anything to get him to the hospital or provide care for him. I personally felt like they had predetermined he was going to die. Did you get that feeling at all?
The paramedic did make a comment how she felt that once they pulled him out of the car that he would lose his pulse. And
what could have been done while she's standing there waiting for him to be?
I would say bringing equipment, extra equipment, like airway equipment, oxygen tank, suction, bringing that down, so as soon as you do get him out of the vehicle and where you can access him to manage the airway, you have everything you need right there to go ahead and handle that.
Right, and there was no suction done according to what you all could see or what's documented, correct?
Right.
And with him having it documented that he had a partially obstructed airway by blood, that suction is just so important.
It's paramount. He's gonna suffocate, basically. You're not.
So you feel like basically he's suffocated.
Yeah, they did nothing to prevent him from dying, and like Michelle said, it really does seem like they already figured, well, he's not going to survive, and at any moment we're going to check and he won't have a pulse, and then we'll just
and that's
stop.
The kind of care
and that's
that was
basically
provided.
And that's basically really what happened. They really didn't do a whole lot, and there are a lot of things they could have done.
And we'll go into that later. We're just doing a little snippet right now, but we're going to do a longer video, a YouTube video, and go into a lot more. Thank you, Katherine, for answering these questions. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.